Now, but Senator, your governor, who I started with, Governor Sanford, is suggesting that he may not take the money. That is $8 billion for the state of South Carolina, about 5% of your gross product.
It won't be that much, but here's
if he refuses the money, will you stand by him?
I think it would be smart for South Carolina to take the money because South Carolina is going to have to pay the money back. The average taxpayer gets $8 of tax relief, but their children get $1 trillion of debt. So, could we have done better?
Why not
yes.
return it to the Treasury?
Well, at the end of the day, it won't come to the Treasury. It'd be spent in some other state. So what I think we've done is blown an opportunity to help the economy. We should have started with housing and banking because this is good money after bad unless you spend housing and banking. And the question people need to understand is how much more do you need to fix housing and banking? $315 billion left in the TARP is not even close to fix housing and banking. And every dollar we waste in here and every policy change in this bill that could have went through the normal process is a opportunity loss for this country.
That brings me to the next subject. I do want to get into the banking and the housing provisions, but there was one more provision in this stimulus package that I want to ask you about, Senator Schumer. At the last minute, a new executive compensation provision was brought in that would cap bonus pay for executives at these financial institutions that receive TARP money at a third of their salary. Now, the opponents of this, including those in the Obama administration, have a number of, they say it's going to lead to a brain drain. Workers are going to go to foreign banks. They say it's going to force the banks to pay back that TARP money before it is the right thing to do. They also say it might have the perverse effect of actually increasing salaries at the bank. So why put this in now?
Well, first, Wall Street has to get it. And the bottom line is the average American says, I go to my desk, I go to my assembly line, I do the right thing, I make no mistakes, and now I'm worried about being laid off. There are declines in pay and benefits. My paycheck stretches less, and yet it seems that a lot of the people on Wall Street basically messed up and they continue to get high salaries.
But you're not worried this is going to backfire?
No, let me say two things about it. First of all, Senator Dodd put together a provision, and it's a provision that I think is strong and tough, and we need strong and tough. And Wall Street has to learn, if you're going to take money, billions of dollars, you're going to have to limit executive comp. I disagree with the administration in this sense. I have no problem if companies want to get out of this program and get out of the program quickly. That's their business and that's their right, and I think that's just fine. But if you're taking federal money, you're going to have some limits on exec comp.
So any of you disagree, or is everybody unanimous?
I look forward to the debate between Chuck Schumer and President Obama on this issue. No, I believe there should have been some caps. I think this went too far, and I think it can be counterproductive.
Can I suggest
the president is going to sign the bill with the provision in it, and you're absolutely right. They were worried this would be a disincentive to talent. And that it would be refused on Wall Street. However, they are now saying, they are going to have to live with it, and he's going to sign the bill.
And the reason that we're doing things about CEOs like Chuck has described is because people were burned on TARP 1. And the big loss of this bill is it's not going down well with the public. I think it missed its mark in terms of stimulating the economy. It drew the government more than stimulating the economy. It's going to be hard for us to go back after this bill to ask for more money for housing and banking.
And you think that's going to be absolutely essential? Secretary Geithner, when you were before his committee this week, would not say how much more would be needed for the banks.
I know $315 billion is not enough to deal with the toxic assets and jumpstart housing.
How much more is needed?
Some people tell me over half a trillion dollars. And after this exercise of TARP 1 and now the stimulus bill, it makes it harder for everybody here to go back to the public and say, please give us more money because we seem irresponsible. There are things in this bill that make the public want to throw up. They know it doesn't create a job, it just creates more government, and we blew it.
Yeah. I don't see anything in this bill that would make anybody want to throw up. This is exciting.
Changing welfare rules in this bill?
The welfare rules are not changed in this bill. As a matter of fact,
it does relieve some work requirements, doesn't it?
Work requirements and also total benefits.
Doubling the size of
the education department. And it also takes out the verification of illegal immigrants.
Congressman Waters finished there.
Yes. What this bill does is give tax breaks to 95% of American workers. We've had tax breaks from the previous administration for the richest 1% in America. Now the American workers are going to get a break. When you couple these tax breaks along with the jobs that are going to be created in the infrastructure, you're going to have not only people who have been losing jobs back in the workplace, but we're going to save jobs and keep businesses from laying off people. This is exciting, and this gives hope. This is a beginning. This is a long-term investment in our economy.
Maxine, here's what I want to say here.
The Congressional Budget Office says over a period of 10 years it's going to deflate gross domestic product and bring down wages. So you voted for a bill that's going to bring down workers' wages under the guise of making people feel good in the short term.
I just want to say this. Every one of the 435 House members and 100 senators can find some provisions they don't like in this bill. 95% of this bill, 98%, does three things: creates or preserves jobs, builds infrastructure, and puts money into the pockets of the middle class. You know, there's a time for quibbling, and there's a time for coming together. This was a time President Obama reached out to a large number of people. This was a time to come together. And, you know, I am disappointed. When George Bush proposed his program, it was all tax cuts, not one single investment program. We all voted for it because we thought the country had to come together. We could have said, Peter, it didn't have this, it didn't have that. This was a time to come together.
We're talking about serious differences. And we're talking about bipartisanship. House Republicans were not allowed at the table. They were not allowed any input whatsoever into the formation of this bill or changing the bill in any way.
$1.1 trillion debt passed on to the next generation is something to quibble about. The tax provisions that would have created jobs were gutted. The Isaacson Amendment was gutted. It was $15,000 refundable tax credit.
He didn't vote for the bill.
Buying houses.
Well, okay, so
he didn't vote for the bill when it was in there.
You punish the
we're going to get a better
to buy a
provision.
home. The carry loss back provision for business was $67 billion. In the Senate, the compromise version was $4 billion. The tax provisions that would have created jobs were replaced by spending. $400 checks goes to the consumer. It's about $8 in a check in a pay period. We tried this last year. That's not going to create any jobs.
That's only one portion of this bill.
That's most of the tax cuts.
And let me say one other thing.
Gutted the tax provisions
on the floor
for
of the
business.
Senate, where there was an open process, Peter, but on the floor of the Senate, I heard over and over again, this is $1 trillion that we're not paying for it. I never heard that mentioned when it came to the Iraq War, which is $1 trillion, which we're not paying for. I never heard it mentioned when George Bush changed a surplus of $300 billion into a deficit of over 800. So all of a sudden, the reason to be against this is deficit spending. But when it was Iraq War or tax cuts for the highest income people, we never heard it.
I think we heard a lot of different reasons.